the other one, you bastard!
The name Perfect Effects implies truly magnificent products, and if you look at their pedigree, they truly have lived up to that title, but not a lot of people know where they first started out. I mean, everybody knows about their Combiner Wars upgrades, those were incredibly lucrative, and these days there's a lot of hype for their one-off Optimus Prime figures that they released, even if they might not have done the best financially. But they got their start making small-scale figures that scale with larger ones. Targetmasters, even if the original characters weren't. So of course you gotta do Blasters cassette minions, right? And where Blasters cassette minions are, obscure repaints are usually not far behind. And if you happen to be one of a fan of those specific small-scale repaints, well, you're in luck. So one thing Perfect Effects loved doing was turning everyone into a Targetmaster. Everyone's a Targetmaster, especially all of the cassettes. It's a wonderful thing. And out of the bunch that they released, I think Rosanna is one of the most visually pleasing. Now don't get me wrong, this is an early third-party figure, so there's going to be some jank that comes with it. Even from Perfect Effects, a party with such a pedigree within the fandom, this is an extremely early release, so not everything's gonna be utterly fantastic. But what we do have is still remarkable. First thing you're gonna notice is the gorgeous paint. Lovely, lovely dark blue panel lining and paint all over the sides here and the sides there and panel lining there, and pink paint all over the thing and white paint all over the thing. This is painted absolutely everywhere. The paint is a smidge chalky, kind of similar to the recently reviewed Titan Return clones, but there is one thing that makes it blend in very well. The plastic itself also has a bit of a matte finish to it. Unfortunately, it is third-party plastic. The plastic that was prevalent when third-party first started out, and they didn't really have access to the best materials. Fortunately, this version of third-party plastic is quite durable. It's closer to DX9 Hulky than, say, the Fans Project Ultra Magnus upgrade, but it is still not as solid as you're used to, so you will have to be a bit delicate with it. But presentation-wise, it is an absolutely remarkable little figure. But there are signs of its age. For example, you'll notice that these kind of just sit there, they don't tab in. And when some of the joints are pretty loose, and yes, this is a new copy, this wasn't an old copy that I've had for a while, it doesn't really work. So for the guns especially, you have to line these up just right so that they fit there and keep everything straight. Make it not work and the guns start drooping. It's not the best design. It's not the worst. For the time it came out, it's still remarkable, but I've seen much better pieces from this period as well. Still, I do like this. I do quite like this. It is clearly a robot folded up into a gun, but there's a lot of details here that go a long way to making it look remarkable. Now, in terms of accessories, you do get an adapter that fits in right there that works with some of the larger Perfect Effect figures. I mean, okay, it doesn't really work that well. Although it is still 5mm port compatible, so it does make holding her much easier. However, I find positioning it on the arm works much better anyway, and you don't need the adapter for that, it works just fine. But yeah, that 5mm compatibility goes a long way to making her not age as poorly. Many third-party figures have trouble with this, because they use proprietary connection ports that don't work with anything today. But they were smart, they went with a 5mm peg, which was very common at the time and is very common today. Especially with the combat and the airlock and the fossilizer system, whatever the fossilizer system is called. Those kinds of acronym systems are pretty stupid, but 5mm ports are good, and this works surprisingly well. Now, size-wise, she is roughly 8.2cm long, 3cm tall, and 2.4cm wide. But let's be real here, size comparisons are kind of, pointless considering she's supposed to scale with the larger bots. As you've seen with Rotorstorm, she fits right in with the traditional chug scale. But if you're a fan of the character and want her on your own, well, she works great as well. Now, aside from the lack of a few locking tabs that you might see on today's figures, it is very similar to the way a Battlemaster works. Remarkably mature engineering for the time. First thing you want to do is untab the legs from there and rotate them down, separate them like so, rotate the waist 180 degrees, and bring out the ball-jointed feet. Now, the guns are supposed to peg into the bottoms there, but one of them doesn't do it quite so well. That's a mileage may vary thing. QC on third party at this time wasn't really a thing, it was just luck of the draw. You start bringing the arms down, but they won't go all the way yet, because the first thing you want to do is take that port and push it upwards so that the head flips out. You then bring the arms up the rest of the way, and that'll actually keep the head locked in place. Orient the arms however you like. Push the guns into pile drivers by pushing them back. Awesome way to get these pile drivers to work. And then rotate the head 180 degrees, and you're done. And I'm like, God, it's Rosanna! I've always wanted a Rosanna in my collection, and the fact that I have one right now is remarkable. But even then, it's a fantastic Rosanna. Sure, it's easier to get a character done out of her because she's just a basic repaint, but they really did a wonderful job with her. Or at least a better job than they did with their reflector. Ugh. Again, the first thing you're gonna notice is the paintwork. The head alone has so much paint. With such tiny paint applications, and given the time this came out, you'd think it would be not very durable, but it remains especially so. The torso as well, the combo of seafoam, grey, blue, whatever it is, combined with the dark blue panel lining, oh man, it just works so amazingly. And the pink, and the panel lining, and the legs, and this thing is covered in paint. I've seldom seen a Legends figure painted this well. I think the only example I can think of that is to this degree would be Iron Factory Yoroi Shishimaru. And the weaker plastic does feel much better here. It really works to the delicate nature of this. Now, the plastic does cause some issues. For example, I've got a loose knee here. It's not the best. And I already mentioned this earlier, but sometimes these have trouble staying in. It looks like they're working quite well now, but sometimes these pile drivers have trouble sticking on. But hey, for now it works, and I get to show it off on camera grade. Hooray! It's actually a bit difficult finding a place for an Autobot symbol because there's so much detail. That was the only place I could think of putting it because everywhere else is just so amazingly done. They've even put the panel lining on the inside of the legs that you wouldn't normally see, my word. And even on the back too, they've got this shiny bluish grey, and it doesn't look like it's the same paint as that. It looks like a completely different paint colour. You can tell they went absolutely all out on this figure. Perfect effect indeed. This is perfect. And if that's not enough, well, you like the pile drivers on the back? Well, you can do that. Untab them and then peg it on the back like so. You like options? They've got options. Works remarkably well. Only problem is now these bits kind of droop around, but it's a small price to pay if that's what you want to do. And those aren't the only accessories she comes with. She comes with 2 swords. Well, they're more like knives and stabbing weapons, but she can hold them quite well. It's a very tight fit, but it does work. Just do be careful. These feel a little bit delicate. Not fragile, but delicate. But you might be noticing there's a hole right there. Well, what does that do? Well, if you so desire, there are these 2 dedicated pegs that peg them in right there. This is a really old third-party Legends figure, before third-party Legends was even a thing, before Iron Factory had even considered taking on the task. And already they're showing a maturity with options. This feels like a mini masterpiece. Well, aside from the plastic quality. But that's a small price to pay. That is the period it came out in. And amongst the peers of the time, well, it's still a remarkably built figure. And the articulation holds up remarkably well as well. You've got a nice swivel at the head, although it can pop off if you pull it off. But unlike the Magic Square ones, it's actually pretty solid. Magic Square has that issue as well, and it's pretty annoying. Hinge upwards at the shoulder, ball jointed elbows that act as a bicep swivel as well as an elbow bend. Gotta take the sword off for this, unfortunately, but they engineered a waist swivel into the transformation. On a figure this old, that is crazy. Then you got ball joints here and ball joints at the knee. Not really sure about the ball jointed feet. They don't accomplish much of a tilt because it's not big enough, but hey, I'll take it. Even the posing on her is fantastic. Absolutely crazy. Now, size-wise, she is 4 centimeters wide and 5.5 centimeters to the head and 7.4 centimeters to the pile drivers. And all of that detail becomes even more commendable when you compare her next to a standard Legion figure and realize how small she is. Also next to a standard Legends figure, a standard Earthrise Micromaster, and Crumbs. So if you want a Rosanna in your collection, well, she seems like the perfect candidate. Not too expensive, considering how rare and expensive the other Rosannas are on the market, but she will put you back a little bit. But for fans of Rosanna, she truly is worth every penny. Aside from the plastic, this does not feel like an early third-party figure. This feels exceedingly modern. The articulation especially, my word, it is done extremely well. I do kind of feel the swords could have been implemented a little bit better and the tolerances could have been fixed, but it's an early third-party figure. Some leeway has to be given. But even then, you don't need to give this figure a lot of leeway because it is remarkably well done. Especially in the paintwork department. My god, this is painted amazingly. This figure's gonna end up on my end-of-year list. I just know it. And they aren't the only ones. Several other third parties threw their hat in the ring for small-scale figures when third party was in its infancy. And considering the flash-fire success of the smallest transforming Transformers, well, you just know someone was going to jump on it. So tomorrow, let's see how that turned out.